Welcome again to Becoming Confidently Unique in Christ. And this is a special day of videos. You've got another one, playing with a non-speaker and no feedback today. But today, in this interview, we're going to hear the words of Aimee O'Connell. She essentially is a non-speaker a little bit too, although she does have the capacity to give voice, but it actually causes her pain to speak. So she is not present and not here in person. You'll be seeing some pictures of her to the side and probably something that she recorded in the past, at least some clips of that at the end of this. But we're going to hear the words that she wrote. That was how she wanted to be included in this, and ask that somebody read her words, and maybe even we have a little discussion about what she says. So that's what we're going to try and do. But yeah, just to introduce Aimee O'Connell, she's a autistic woman, which you'll hear all about from her story. But God moved her into founding a website, Autism Consecrated, really about embracing autism rather than trying to live in a way that you're accommodating. And she'll hear in her story, I think, as well. And today, to hear her words, spoken, I didn't think a male voice would quite be the best to hear the words of writing of a woman. So Tilly Grace, who you've graced to catch your interview earlier, has agreed to give voice to Aimee's words. So welcome, Tilly.
Thanks.
Okay. So as such, you kind of introduced what's going on a little bit, and so Aimee's got quite a bit to say. So we'll let Tilly start with how she wants to start it, and then read Aimee's words.
So this is what Aimee has sent us, and I'm just going to go ahead and read through this because she's such a great communicator and wonderfully written. So I'm just going to read it as it is. So she says, Autism Consecrated by Aimee O'Connell. I'm going to begin right off the bat with a whoosh and a bang. Let's get right to it. This is my success story. I think you'll agree I have many good reasons to be thankful, starting all the way back to when I was still in the womb. It was spring of 1973, and my mother was thrilled to be carrying her first child. I was growing steadily into the third trimester, and then things began to get dicey. My mother began experiencing hemorrhages, which got progressively worse, difficulties with the placenta. My mother was cautioned to rest as much as possible and watch for any further signs of bleeding. Toward May, another hemorrhage occurred. This time, when the bleeding stopped, my mother's vital signs returned to normal, but there was no heartbeat detected in the womb, no matter how carefully and persistently the doctors checked. After several hours, my mother was told that her baby had suffered too great a loss of oxygen. She was sent home and told to remain in bed until the next day, when she could schedule an appointment for counseling on stillbirth. My mother, being a woman of faith, went home obediently to lay still, or more precisely, to be still, and know that God is God. She was devastated to hear that her baby had died, but she knew that the last word on life and death belonged to the Creator. Opening her Bible, she prayed for a verse, and her eyes fell immediately on Matthew 7. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it will be opened to you. Filled with the audacity of the Holy Spirit, my mother asked, sought, and knocked, declaring to God that the child in her womb is His, and if He should breathe the breath of life back into this child, may it be to His honor and glory. Before she could inhale to say Amen, her belly stirred with such movement that there was no doubt, and no need to guess what she told the doctors moments later by emergency telephone call. This baby was alive. They asked her to come back immediately, and yes, they confirmed that the baby had indeed survived the ordeal. They cautioned her that a loss of blood this great might result in brain damage or worse, but there was no keeping my mother from rejoicing and promising that the child was already perfect in the eyes of God. In July 1973, I was born, a month premature but completely able to breathe and thrive without medical care. There were no signs of any disability or defect, and so my life began. Now, as far as storytelling, in July 1973, I was born, a month premature but completely able to breathe and thrive without medical care. There were no signs of any disability or defect, and so my life began. Now, as far as storytelling, what in the world can follow an introduction like that? Well, in the world, there was plenty, for it seems I not only met all the right developmental milestones, I surpassed them by leaps and bounds. At 7 months old, yes, that's right. Less than a year old, I was speaking in short sentences. By 2 years old, I could read books by myself. I had an insatiable thirst for knowledge and loved asking questions. When I started kindergarten, the teachers were stumped as to what to do with me, as I was too advanced for this level, but too young to be in the third or fourth grade, where they thought I might belong. As a compromise, they let me do part of my schoolwork with the older kids and then help my kindergarten classmates with their reading for the rest of the day. I never thought anything was very unusual. It felt like I had always known how to read, just as I had always known how to breathe. I didn't realize that I was different from anyone else. What nobody realized was that this amazing ability had a clinical name, hyperlexia. Nor did they realize that this is a hallmark of the uneven development seen in autistic kids. Had my teachers been aware of this, they might have balanced their observations to look at my other skills or lack thereof. I was terribly uncoordinated. I could not tie my shoes or cut with scissors. I was not able to throw a ball with accuracy or catch a ball without getting hit. I did not know how to talk to my classmates as friends. Instead, I recited facts to them, and free play was never possible unless I knew exactly what was going to happen and rehearsed it with them ahead of time. I irritated most of my classmates, and I was left out of many playdates because other kids' parents thought I was bossy. My teachers continued seeing none of my challenges, speaking only of my academic greatness. As I progressed through each grade, I received award after award for achievements. I was put in charge of performing ensembles and showcased as a model student everywhere I went. I aced spelling bees, won essay contests, was in my hikes, I was interviewed on television, and told repeatedly how successful I was. My mother believed it all reflected God's intervention to save my life in the womb. My extended family members knew me as the star scholar of the family. But did they know?
Wow. Yeah, because that was a lot there. Yeah, I mean, just amazing that the power of God at the womb. Her mother asked, and sought to God, let this wonderful woman come to be. And then her ability to excel in all these kinds of ways is a testimony of God's blessing, really, in terms of what He did. Is He put her here for a reason and a purpose, and she was able to excel in those ways, with the limitations that she had. Yeah, I think that is profound.
Yeah. Um, Watching in when I read, I see a visual happening, and so I see the faith of her mom, to go home and just lay completely still and just bring that to God's feet, and lay her child's life before our Father. Um, it's profound. It really is. And then to see, she's not even completed the amen end of her prayer. And there's this wild movement,
Yes.
confirming that like God moves. And it's that I also feel the loneliness. I know that we haven't got to the rest of her story yet, but when everybody's looking at all the academics and everything she can do, but not noticing the things that are lacking. I think that many people can resonate with that. So it's great that she's sharing her testimony here.
And with that, since you read her next transition question, good time to go into back to her story in terms of what she herself just asked.
She said, but did they know me? As I transitioned from elementary into middle and high school, a disconnect began to grow within myself. I found the size of my new school, along with the noise level, the chaos between classes, and the pressure to be popular, overwhelming. I could barely keep up with so many conversations about social topics I did not understand. I easily kept up with the academics, though, and so I put all my energy into my schoolwork. I carried straight A's all 4 years, finishing third in my class with high honors. Once more, the accolades poured over me from every adult in my life. At this time, all the while, all these excellent grades, and nobody noticed that I had stopped talking. That's right. I said nothing in class and was generally not called on by teachers. I said almost nothing to my schoolmates either, and they didn't seem to notice. I now know that this is a condition of overwhelmed processing called situational mutism, and that it is fairly common among autistic people. But back then, the honor roll obscured anyone from seeing if I needed help or support. Interestingly, I won a citywide writing award 2 years in a row. I communicated fluently in writing, even if my voice was rarely heard. I first learned about autism in a book I read about a boy who never spoke and mystified his teachers. I felt a kindred recognition when I read his story, and I remembered asking someone if I too might be autistic. They laughed, saying I was too impressionable. Why didn't anyone see how much I struggled? Why did I feel like I was born wearing a mask I was never allowed to take off? I think stopping there for a moment would be great
And
also because there's
absolutely.
so many that can resonate with different parts of her story. And I think that Aimee has done a wonderful job in sharing, because just as she recognized with that story of the boy who felt that kindred spirit, somebody is going to hear her testimony
Mhm.
and be encouraged.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even, I think of, when, because I obviously didn't know Aimee when I approached. I saw the website and I go, this fits within what God has for me to do. And I approach her, he goes, she first tells me, okay, but, I really don't have a voice. And then I was a little confused because I looked at her website further and she's got a few videos on there. So, it sounds like your voice is okay to me. I don't know what the deal is. And then she told me, no, that really pained me to do those things. It took everything out of me. So yeah, she's got 3 videos that are out there that took a lot to do, in terms of that. Yeah, I think you'll hear more about, some of her freedom and accepting, who she was, because that was the other thing she said. You're not, just looking for those that are showing that I'm accepted in a society, or looking for, hearing people as they are and being accepted as they are. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about that, but it's all powerful and overwhelming to hear as she moves through.
Yeah, that's really good. I love the last question here. Why did I feel like I was born wearing a mask I was never allowed to take off?
Right.
Um, and she makes a great point later on that things have changed over the years, and it is more widely talked about, and different, you know, um, uniqueness. Each of those things has grown. So I think more today we are encouraged to take that mask off, but there's still that, like, that need to be accepted. And so when we are following Christ, we find our acceptance there. And I
And we
just,
all kind of do sit behind the masks,
Mhm.
the distortion, the twisting that exists out there, that we just want to believe that we're going to be loved, but get stuck on looking good, appearing good. And even as Aimee here, I'm doing really well. I'm performing. I'm living up to the expectations that, what I can do,
right, all the
but
while
not
drowning inside, you know.
exactly.
Uh,
Yes. Oh my.
she goes on to say, I was accepted into college without difficulty. I chose to study psychology as it interested me deeply and gave me a chance to explore more about the brain and how people learn. As before, I thrived in my studies, but I still struggled terribly with loneliness. If it was hard to fit in while I was in high school, it was even harder to make friends trying to function with my sensory overwhelm in bigger, louder, and less familiar surroundings. I so clearly remember praying one afternoon and wondering if God heard me, and suddenly feeling, out of nowhere, like someone was reassuring me with the words, there is someone you will meet who is specially chosen for you on this campus. I had no idea if that was wishful thinking or Jesus's answer in my heart, but I held on to that tightly. A few weeks later, quite by accident, I met someone who seemed to understand me intuitively and who shared several of my interests, which up until then had been too obscure and archaic for anyone else to relate to. Having his companionship was a gift to me and an assurance that God most certainly saw, heard, and stayed close to me throughout all of my hidden suffering. It may come as no surprise to learn that I married this man 6 years later, and we are still going strong. After graduating magna cum laude from college, surrounded by more praise and accolades for my academic achievements, I enrolled in a master's degree program for school psychology. I was encouraged to also apply for a position as a residence director to help finance my room and board. When I interviewed for the position, the questions all focused on what I can do. This is no little surprise, after all. What kind of interview asks what we cannot do? I was told I would be a perfect fit for the job. In many ways, this job would form a defining moment that would eventually shape the course I took, but not right away. As residence director, I had many hats to wear, including overseeing publication of a community newsletter and being on call for troubleshooting residents' needs. I gave many hours of attention to doing my job well, and everyone seemed to agree that I did. And then, 3/4 of the way through the year, I was informed that I was going to be let go at the end of the school term. Why? Because other staff felt I was not a good fit, based on their observation of me during off-hours activities. That's right. Not based on my performance or work ethic, but based on things they found I could not do. I was too quiet at staff meetings, and I was not physically coordinated enough to participate in staff sports, including a staff outing to a ropes course, which was a physical impossibility and a sensory nightmare for me. And I did not do things in the usual way people expected. Even if tasks were always diligently done, I was told by my boss that I had strong moral character, but I simply was not a good social fit for the position. Awful.
Right. Well, she gets to, he gets it. I didn't give her the pre-programmed set of outline, but right there, you hear the barriers, you hear what she came against in terms of not understanding and expectations that people, line up in a particular way. And I can just imagine the depth of pain that was there over, having such a response, and I just
That
don't know what to
rejection,
say. Yeah.
no. Yeah. And I know that many of us, I'm sure probably every single one of us, can relate to rejection in some form or another. And, to feel that so heavily when you are in loneliness and isolation and you're not understood, feeling like you don't have anybody in your corner. So I imagine that going through that, it was so special of God to align her with her husband before that happened. I love that fact.
The nature of God's love. And if anyone's out there saying, I'm unlovable, I can't have a spouse, God brings all sorts of people together in his time and his way. And if he gives you, the sense intuitively and internally that there's somebody there for you, there will be. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it happen. Even my dear friend Craig, who I've talked about and is deceased, when through his life after getting married, he felt like at some period of time he really wanted to be married, but never was going to happen. And then he met Andy, who you heard from here. God does what he does and moves, and so yeah, he shows his love in ways that we can't understand, and did here for Aimee, even though she faced a lack of love, certainly as well.
Yeah. So she says, it devastated me to think that my peers never shared these concerns with me directly or tried to understand my side of things. It reopened the pain of the loneliness and rejection I suffered all through high school, and worst of all, the problem very clearly pointed to me. I would have to try harder, push myself, endure the literal physical pain of doing more than my body is designed to do, and then would I be good enough to be accepted? Just as when I was younger, my needs were dismissed, so now this university, proclaiming development of every student's potential at its core value, felt that my physical, sensory, and processing uniqueness was a liability. I came to see that the prevailing sense of human development was not so much on celebrating uniqueness as it was celebrating conformity to arbitrary standards set by people led by the numerical ideal of the majority. This would not be the last time I came up against the tyranny of statistics, but it was a most personally painful introduction. In my graduate study, Oh, sorry.
The tyranny of statistics. I like her phrasing
Yeah.
there. The what it is that we expect out of what the numbers say.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's so true too, because, you know, she was, this position was taken away from her because of what other people thought she wasn't good at as a person. Like that's detrimental. If she didn't have God and she didn't lean on him through this process, in today's society, this could be life ending for someone,
Well, for
you know,
sure,
in
for sure.
this social atmosphere that we live in. So I really pray that anybody hearing these kinds of things and God uses all of that. So hang on. Keep going.
Yes.
In my graduate studies, I had a second blow to my confidence come out of the blue. I carried a 4.0 GPA and even aced the toughest classes, including a neuropsychology course that most of my classmates complained was too difficult and detailed to grasp. Yet I was told that my practicum experience in one of my courses was too far below passing because I did not demonstrate adequate ability to speak. It did not matter that I had listened diligently to the teachers concerned and had spent careful time formulating a response and a plan that carefully considered everyone's needs. It was that I thought I was not verbal enough in their opinion throughout the process. I was offered the option of taking an incomplete for the course and repeating the practicum for a do-over, which I did take and did complete. When I submitted my second portfolio, I fully admit it was much more superficial and scripted, downright staged, compared to my first genuine attempt. I put more energy into playing the role of chatty person than giving thought to the needs of either student or teacher. I scored quite well the second time around and kept my position in the program safe, but I felt like I'd lost my passion along with my confidence. I wondered if I was kidding myself for pursuing a career in a school setting where I'd already felt years and years of alienation. I questioned why God let everyone think I was successful when I can't figure out basic things like how to talk and how to be relatable around others. If God doesn't make mistakes, it must be I'm not trying hard enough or I'm not living up to my potential. I dreaded the idea of letting the Lord down after He saved my life and gave me such a brilliant mind. Still, I prayed and asked for direction. Our God is a faithful God, and through an unexpected schedule change, I was placed for my next practicum in a day treatment setting rather than a traditional school. My supervisor noted my natural instinct seemed well suited to a smaller, more personal setting like this was. Being in the right environment with like minded people made it possible for me to process information more easily and, in turn, to perform better in my job and to feel more comfortable being myself. This supervisor went on to help me find my first job in another small school that had previously had no psychologist on staff. It was an exciting opportunity for me to apply my creativity in a setting where I could set the pace and standard, something which I now know is an asset for autistic people who need a balance between creativity and routine with plenty of autonomy in order to thrive. I know that God saw and God knew right where I should be. And so it was that I worked as a school psychologist for several years, albeit in non-traditional ways, troubleshooting with individuals, helping them see their strengths and processing styles more than their deficits. I was free from the pressure to rely heavily on statistical norms and standardized tests to help the students, which is a liberty I could not have enjoyed had I gone on to work in a large school district. After a few years, I switched back to working in a day treatment setting once again, this time with adults, and thrived once more on the one-to-one interaction. I felt this is where I was meant to be professionally, and I can honestly say that I benefited as much as anyone I considered a client. And that's a success story. Or is it? If it were 20 years ago,
Yeah, her last sentence, I mean, that is the ultimate of helping with people. You learn just as much, yeah, going through connecting with others as you do, yeah, in terms of what you pour in, you receive as much as you give, as I've learned in my years. But in just that whole process of first feeling she's got to perform and had to perform in order to get by, and yeah, the reaction I have to that is when we're squashed with who God created us to be, when we're not living in alignment with how God made us to be, it has significant psychological effects. And without going into any details, a gentleman at church I'd spoken to, had severe depression. As we had a conversation, and under understanding, he had squelched his exploring nature. By the career he did, that ultimately it crashed him into severe depression. And when we talked with me, we finally figured out why it was he had such a severe depression, because he hadn't thought about it. But he loves to explore, and that was, as a career as an engineer, he did to have money to explore, but he never ended up doing that, and squelched himself to the point where he just broke down. And so these kinds of things, and having to be something different in order to get by, in order to pass, because of expectations, that's just horrendous, and causes all sorts of mental health issues, something like that, in terms of all sorts of people, because it's not in line with who God made us to be.
Right. She says, and that's the success story, or is it?
Right.
If it were 20 years ago, I might think so, but at that time I was only warming up. In the early 2000s, my husband and I began growing our family, and I decided to end my professional work so I could stay home to raise our children. Eventually, we would have three. Having spent so many years working with kids, I eagerly looked forward to savoring our own family moments for myself. In working with parents of children with special needs, it's often the case where we find glimmers of recognition in parents' eyes when they hear why their child may be struggling in one way or another. Many times, parents recall similar situations from their own childhood. It can be enlightening, and it can also trigger a cascade of difficult emotions, especially if these memories were not happy episodes for them. Many times, our children's needs echo those which were not identified, recognized, or supported in our own lives. More often, the special needs of past generations were ignored, criticized, or even ridiculed. That can be enormously challenging to sit with once we see the same needs emerging in our own children. While parents do not want to repeat the same mistakes they endured, there is a part of them that grieves for the support and understanding they never had. By the time my children were born, I had worked long enough to know that my own struggles were all consistent with autism. Furthermore, I recognized autistic traits throughout my family tree. Had I been born a generation later, I might have been diagnosed and supported early on. But the prevailing attitude in my time was that success disproved the need for any label or special services. Even when I brought up my diagnosis as an adult, I was dismissed, being told that I had turned out just fine and that was all that mattered. And so there I was on the other side of the table, being shown test results that my own children were autistic. It was my turn to take the professional suggestions. I readily accepted everything with eyes wide open, knowing what my children would need to navigate the sensory and social challenges ahead. It seemed easy enough, especially since I had a good sense of what to expect. In the early 2000s, best practices were aimed at reducing the degree to which a person appears autistic. The goal was to remediate deficits until the person no longer qualified as disabled. It all sounded very logical. If someone had a broken arm, the treatment would be to rest, then strengthen the arm until it was completely healed. Likewise, autism was targeted to be treated with social skills, speech exercises, sensory integration exercises, fine motor practice, behavior training, and large motor exercises until the person no longer qualified as autistic. I wondered how my life would have been different if I had been given therapy for all the areas in which I silently struggled. It all sounded reasonable to me, except. So I think pausing here would be really good because it's so true that generational hurt that continues to go on so many times, when we have children of our own and see those needs arise that we didn't have dealt with. That is a really hard thing to walk through. Parenting at the same time you're trying to heal is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. And I see that here with Aimee, that it's not just one, area that applies to, that it's many more and much wider. Hard.
Absolutely.
So she says, except my oldest child, who was the first to start these rounds of therapy, did not seem happy. In fact, she seemed to lose joy by the day. At one time, she had 6 different people working with her on a rotating schedule throughout the week, and each therapist brought their own bag of toys, games, and activities. Her behaviors were monitored and tracked diligently, and the list of suggested interventions grew daily. When she was school-aged, her therapies followed her there, and she was never without support. What could be missing? At the age of 6, she had been in therapy for 3 years already and was said to be making excellent progress by all accounts. And one day, when the family was enjoying the first day of summer, she threw down her toys and screamed, "Why can't I just have fun like everyone else?" I saw instantly what she meant. In her direct and uncomplicated way, she declared at full volume her weariness of being constantly under the microscope of all her therapies. It was true. She did not have spontaneous fun like other children. She had all of her fun analyzed and scripted and written to conform to someone's idea of what was right. She went to school, gave everything she had, and came home completely spent. She had glowing report cards and no joy to show for it. As I digested all of this, I looked toward her younger brother, who himself was just starting the rounds of therapy for his own autism, and I realized that he too had gone from being a chipper and quirky toddler to a worried-looking preschooler. My youngest was still too young to diagnose, but was nonetheless being watched closely by our pediatric team. Would she end up as burnt out as the older two before she was even in kindergarten? On the one hand, I knew firsthand what it feels like to be an unrecognized autistic. I was determined not to focus only on what my children did well, pretending not to see the areas in which they struggled, such as speech, muscle coordination, sensory overwhelm, and anxiety in group settings. On the other hand, therapy was my professional specialty, so I knew the protocol and rationale behind early intervention. Why then did it feel like I was missing the mark on both accounts?
As it was. Essentially, behavior before missing the heart and missing the soul of who the kids were. Just this is how we get you to shape into being good for society, and here's the ways we do, and not even any enjoyment. I mean, just sad.
And I think that, it's the intention is so good there, you know. But if we're not taking all of that to God and really knowing our limits and really shining on what His Word says and how we should be functioning, then we are missing the mark. And I've, myself been through years and years of therapy, and it has helped, but it's not the thing that has fixed, it's been God. And so much of the therapies and things are based off of science and, all of the testing and things like that. So it is hard when we're not.
Here's a funny thing, and just to share about testing and psychological care. You can't really qualify anything psychologically as effective. I mean, it's just not really possible because there's too many variables.
Mhm.
Too much goes on, although they got evidence-based practices and evidence-based therapies, even here, following evidence-based therapies in terms of what helps the autistic. I mean, what they were doing was evidence-based, mind you,
Right,
but it,
right.
it took the individual out, took the variables out, and we're just following these programs. And people spend a lot of time, and they say you just got to spend a lot of time with the autistic to get them in shape to fit into society. I mean, that's seen over and over again, rather than helping them be the best that they can be and grow and mature. And it's hard because I can tell you in my job at the emergency room right now, when you've got overloaded, overstimulated, acting out autistic individuals who might be suicidal, might be getting aggressive, or any history of aggression, they're treated much differently than anybody else because they need a lot of support on a mental health unit, need a lot of things, so they don't get the same kind of care. They really don't, because of the same thing she's talking about here. And it just really is, rather than finding the way to come in and understand and help them grow into who they are, you got these things that puts a whole lot of pressure on them. Yeah, certainly from what I'm reading and hearing, that's my reaction.
She says, my answer came once again in prayer. This time, it was not a scripture verse, but rather a phrase which came to me very clearly: Autism Consecrated. As soon as the words formed in my mind, I understood intuitively that this was it. This was my life story culminated in from the moment I was saved in the womb all the way to now. God most certainly accepted the dedication of my life to his glory when my mother commended me to him in the crucial moment of life or death. However, that glory would not be revealed in any special ability or achievement. That glory would also not be revealed by conquering the obstacles and difficulties which autism presented. The glory would be found in the autism itself, which I was now being asked to fully embrace and fully offer to God through Jesus Christ. That word consecrate means to set aside and dedicate to holy service. And so Autism Consecrated meant dedicating not just my life, but my autistic life to the holy service of God. It would take me from a worldview of I can to I cannot, and has amazed me time and again to see the doors that opened as a result. Now, let me pause here to emphatically clarify that I am not anti-therapy, and I have not stopped helping my children in the areas in which they struggle. Learning about our nervous system, sensory processing, social anxiety, and autistic wiring is an essential aspect of our growth and development, and it has not come without many moments of great challenge. We still strive to do all that we can with the bodies and minds we have been given, and we still take measures to improve our skills and abilities wherever we can. But what we do not do is push ourselves beyond our abilities to cope. When we feel our limits being reached, we show ourselves compassion by taking the steps we need to maintain our physical and emotional health. In other words, we practice knowing when to say I cannot. We do not go by the motto of no pain, no gain. We seek to know, love, and serve God, and to God goes the glory. Consecrating our autism is an ongoing process. It is not a once and done kind of act. In the years since making that commitment to God, I have had many opportunities to see where I still hold myself to worldly standards of success and how I pay for it afterwards. After dedicating my autism to Christ, I was eager to share my witness with others. And so, along with an autistic priest, I co-founded a website with that phrase as its title, Autism Consecrated. Launching a website typically involves heavy publicity, including speaking engagements, interviews, video uploads, and heavy exposure. But as you'll recall, speaking has never been my strong point, and I have never processed information well in any public setting. Wouldn't you think I would know that by now? It was only after the first few videos and interviews that I took stock of the costs each incurred on my health. Without exaggeration, video recording and speaking engagements take so much out of me that I can barely function the rest of the day. In one case, the exhaustion was so great that I required bed rest immediately afterward. As passionate as I am about sharing the message of Autism Consecrated, I need to abide by my own credo. Speaking is not my natural gift, then how can it be fruitful to chase after that gift, to the exclusion of the gifts God has already abundantly provided? One of the unexpected joys of consecrating my autism has been watching God's glory unfold each time I confess, with confidence, those things I cannot do. When I step aside and stop trying to be what I am not, the Holy Spirit steps in and God's glory shines through, sometimes by inspiring others to help, and sometimes by others seeing that they are not alone in their weakness, and sometimes by raising the minds of the community to realize that more still needs to be done to show better hospitality to those among us who are neurodivergent. The struggles have never gone away, but the senseless suffering and isolation has given way to real hope and connection, the likes of which I never experienced while the goal was to hide or correct my weakness. I have seen unquestionably where 2 or 3 gathered in God's name, Jesus becomes truly present. And so I conclude today with a short litany of triumphs as I proclaim just a few of the things which I cannot do. I cannot do many things other people think I should. Prove my worth by what I achieve. Depend on God if I don't need his help. Truly relate to others when I am not honest about my needs. Damage my health by pushing through activities I find too difficult. Fake it till I make it. Focus on developing gifts that are not mine. Ignore the gifts I do have because I fear they are not enough. be who I am not created to be. I am profoundly grateful to God for the gift of my life, the talents He has given me, and the autistic journey He has called me to consecrate. To learn more, please visit autismconsecrated.com. Thank you, and may we all do things in Christ who strengthens us.
Wow. Yeah, so not much to add to what you said, but just her litany of what you cannot, it applies to us all, really, and be who you're created to be. I mean, that's essentially embrace who God made you to be. That's what I mean, embrace exceptionality, because God made you and created you well. You hear this in Aimee. Such a powerful words and heart that you hear and what she had to say and share of her story. And that's just a piece of it that she's shown us, that, her family and husband got to experience it. But we all hold back, don't we? We all try to fit in.
Um, when I said yes to reading her things and what she had to say, I wasn't expecting that it was something that she couldn't do. Um, I just assumed that, there was some sort of scheduling thing or that she wasn't available. And I've been told in one form or another that I have a nice voice. And so I just thought, well, I've already done mine and why not? I can help, I'm available, so sure. And read that it's something that she cannot do, but it's something that God has gifted me with to be able to step into that for her. I'm clearly, honestly, overwhelmed with God's goodness and how He provides to get her message out there.
Which speaks to the need for community. We need one another. We need Aimee. Mind you, we need somebody like Aimee. And God put us here even to touch the hearts and souls of us here.
Yeah.
And to come alongside in community and love here to get her story out. For many people
Right.
wouldn't sit down and take the time. You can't speak. Okay. You can't even show up on video. What's that? That doesn't fit with what I want to do. So, okay. I wish you well.
Yeah. And that's what society would say is,
Right.
On to the next. But so, so good that God has brought all of us together in this space, to give word to everyone, and show how God works through us all uniquely,
Oh, uniquely.
again,
Yeah.
embracing
Right. And
embracing.
Amy's video here will be the longest one of them. She'll be outpacing my video by a bit, especially if I add on some clips of it so that you can actually see her voice in terms of where it looks like. And you say, okay, yeah, she's got voice. It sounds like she could do fine. That's but it appears. I mean, that's what my experience was of looking at the videos as they go. Yeah, okay, your voice seems okay. You don't have to be concerned about how you come off, because that was what was in my mind. And then she shared with me, it's like, oh, I really am naive, aren't I? I think I understand autism a little bit because my experience, helping, individuals be who they are and work through their emotional outbursts, and how to be who they are. But I had no clue, and certainly I had no clue here. And as the ones that also hear from Noah today, you'll find out you have no clue, what's going on with him. It's a special video as well. And so it's just powerful. And I'm, left now emotionally spent, from this, and again, the need for connection. Yeah. Where we are weak, God comes through, makes us strong. And part of that is by bringing others around. He's gifted in other ways to step in where we can't.
Absolutely. Great job for Aimee.
Yes.
Uh,
Awesome.
knowing that that's a limit for you,
Yeah.
whatever that is, if being strong in our limits. I just was earlier today sharing with Libby, my leader, that, you know, she is a great leader, and I'm so blessed to be on her team because as a leader, you have to know that somebody else's strength doesn't mean that you don't have that leader quality. It means that you recognize that somebody else's strength can play on your weaknesses, and you can be community, you can be a team, you can work together because you play off of each other and you are stronger together. And so great job, Aimee.
Great job. And just on her academic side, is she herself, and you'll find on the website, and I may pull a clip from that. She found that way back when there was a Catholic saint called Saint Thorloff who was autistic. It
Mm.
meets all the different. Yeah, she's actually got a full book outlining his life. You can find on Amazon, but she also tells the story on the website too. And one of her videos, it talks about that man as well. So I'll probably, catch a clip from each of the three briefly. But shortly. I'm not going to do long because this is already going to be a long video. But I think it's important to gain,
Definitely
her as
important
well as.
and worth it.
All right.
Absolutely.
So I think we were both blessed, Aimee, even though, I mean, not Aimee, Tilly, because that's right,
See,
but
Stand in for
it
Aimee. It's okay.
Tilly stepping in for Aimee, that we were blessed by Aimee here, both of us. So thank you for stepping up, because I had no clue. Yes, I got to throw it out there. And somebody, because I don't know who to even ask and who to bring in, but God knows exactly who he was to step in, and it's amazing how he puts things together, because I couldn't do this myself. I would have no clue.
And to see all of that together, um, because I mean, we've only been on Facebook friends for not that long.
No,
And
I ran across you. I think your random friends as I'm going. It's like I want to expand so that people get a message out
yeah,
and you be able to do what I do. And I saw your Facebook posts, and then I look at them and I go, praying, like, who do I ask? And and reached out to you, which led me to Libby. But I'm like, okay, this seems, you were that way, and Nathalia was that way. Mickey was that way, just random connections that don't have a whole lot of things by the Google searching that find. God brought these people together, and of the people that have power in terms of my connection, Natalia is right up there, who interviewed me. And Mickey, her heart is something else, and I wouldn't have found them other than God bringing them here. In fact, even there's a man that you've heard the interview, Ephron, who randomly showed up in my group. I didn't invite him. And he would start posting a lot in my group. And suddenly I didn't invite him, and I had trouble with Aaron, being able to schedule or even get back to me. So I figured he was not going to be able to come through. So I asked Efren. And Efren is, yep, whatever God does, no problem. In fact, we'll book the interview the next day. Find out that he's just a man who goes around serving God, as you hear in that story. And then Aaron was able to then, in turn, get his booked, and Aaron and Ephron, felt put together. No, they're not put together. Aaron's with Roger, but yeah, it's
just
amazing what God does.
like I just in all of the people that God has brought to you, He specifically brought someone who Aimee does not speak
Mhm.
in a public setting, and also someone who does
Yes.
to connect in the same, out of all of the people that have been brought to you on
Yes.
Facebook, out of, the entire world,
That's right.
here, this is what he brought to you. Like, if that's not God, I mean, come on.
Okay. That's the lesson in there, because my own issues and rejection issues and having to randomly set out things to hundreds, over 100 people that try to get an answer, and
Yeah.
getting no response, getting over there, hate it. Yeah, I
Mm.
hated that the first time. I hated it the second time. It's not what I like to do, but I like to connect. I like connections, but I don't like the approaching randomly cold people on that front. That's just not something I enjoy doing. But yeah, then I start watching what God does and getting beyond. Okay, I'm just searching for what God, rather than rejection. I'm just seeking out what God is putting together.
Right.
That was a reframe of my mind in terms of transfer. Renewing my mind here. It's like, when I'm doing this, I'm seeking out who God's going to put together for his thing, because it really is not about me. Even though he's using me here and has got a plan for me that I have no idea how it's all going to play out. I'm just trying to step into the moment here.
Yeah. That obedience.
Yeah.
Great
So
job.
again, thank you, and you'll see some more here of Aimee as I get that edited in. But blessings, Tilly. Much appreciated. I'm grateful for God for bringing this connection and bringing you here, and you're partaking in this. It truly is a blessing as well. And Aimee, as you watch your video, I hope you like how this played out. I hope that I expect to hear from you what your feedback is, Aimee, in terms of how this played for you, and if it met what you hoped would see. As you said, it would be good to have some discussion in the parts in terms of what you envisioned, and maybe it's more than what you thought. I hope so. So we'll sign off the recording. There'll be a little bit more of Aimee as we go, and and you were able to enjoy the pictures along with. So we'll call this good night.
All right. Thanks.
Hi, thanks for watching this interview. Now, I'm going to include some clips from YouTube. Now, I tried to download them themselves, but actually had to record them online. There wasn't really a way to fully taking and put a clip into the presentation otherwise. Now, those of you, if you got enough from the interview and that's enough for you, and you want to end the video here, go ahead, because and these clips aren't really going to do justice with just being a short little clip. Now, again, she's got 3 hours worth of material that's online that's worth listening to all, and I'm going to take a deeper, longer, concerted listen. But from what I picked out some pieces that are, some are a little lengthy, that gives you a taste of Aimee's contribution, even Aimee's heart for even what this seminar and this summit's all about. And so sit back and listen to what's there. Listen more on her actual YouTubes, but I hope you appreciate the clips that I put in here. And so sit back, hear and see, parts of Aimee, a little bit, but mostly hear Aimee here and her perspective of herself and St. Thorlac. Far more on that on her website than her videos herself, but you get a little taste. So sit back.
I pursued my master's in school psychology, and I found my calling there. That's really where I thrived. I met peers that were also interested in these things, and people who were passionate about being helpful and advocating for students and for learning. And I got to have some of the most wonderful formative experiences of my lifetime to even today. Back when I was setting out to go into my career field, I also began to feel stirred inside that there's something just over the horizon that I can't see, but it's there and it's calling to me, and it somehow connected with that feeling I had when I was 15, that